Samurai Nippon. Legends of Master Swordsman.
Keen, the sound of a bamboo sword cutting through the air echoes in the dojo. This sound, heard daily in modern Kendo, halls actually carries within it the bloodline of Japanese swordsmanship spanning 400 years, from the Shinkage-ryu that blossomed in the Sengoku period to the Hokushin Itto-ryu that the loyalist warriors of the Bakumatsu era learned through blood and sweat. How have the techniques and spirit embedded in a single sword continued to live on, transcending time? Today, let us carefully unravel this magnificent genealogy, one thread at a time.
Before that, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. This will help the right videos appear for you.
Chapter 1. The turbulent Sengoku period and the dawn of swordsmanship revolution.
During the Tenbun era, 1532–1555, the Japanese archipelago was literally engulfed in the whirlpool of warfare. The authority of the Muromachi shogunate had fallen to the ground, and regional daimyo across the land were vying for supremacy, with their own ambitions burning in their hearts. In the capital of Kyoto, the chaos that had continued, since the Onin War still showed no signs of abating, while in the provinces, skirmishes between local lords were incessant. Above all, the new weapon called the arquebus, introduced to Tanegashima, was threatening to overturn the entire conventional tactical system from its very foundations. In this turbulent era, the thunderous roar of arquebuses mixed with the metallic clash of swords and blades on battlefields. However, it was precisely this chaotic situation that became the breeding ground for the greatest technological revolution. In the history of Japanese swordsmanship, previous swordsmanship had been centered primarily on techniques called tachidori and kogusoku. These were techniques for mounted or foot combat between armored warriors, premised on fighting while encased in heavy armor. However, as the Sengoku period progressed, tactical diversification led to a dramatic increase in opportunities for light-armed mobile warfare and individual combat without armor. With the emergence of ashigaru as a new type of soldier, the increase in hand-to-hand combat during castle sieges, and, above all, the deterioration of daily public security situations arose continuously that could not be handled by conventional swordsmanship premised on heavy armor. The warrior who perceived this change most keenly was Kamiizumi Isenokami Nobutsuna. Born in Kozuke Province, present-day Gunma Prefecture, Nobutsuna was born around Aisho 5, 1508, and had displayed talent in martial arts from childhood. While he learned the secrets of Aisukage-ryu from a swordsman named Aisu Ikusai, he did not stop at mere imitation. Through accumulating his own combat experience, he began working toward the construction of an entirely new swordsmanship system. What Nobutsuna particularly focused on was perfecting Suji-jenshu, Suhada Kenjutsu, or bearskin swordsmanship that did not depend on armor. This was a technical system that could reliably defend and counterattack, even without heavy armor or against attacks aimed at gaps in armor. Nobutsuna was convinced that this was the proper form of swordsmanship, adapted to the new battlefield environment of the Sengoku period. Entering the Oroku era, 1558–1570, Nobutsuna's research bore fruit. After years of training, combat experience, and theoretical exploration, he finally completed a revolutionary swordsmanship theory. This marked the birth of what would later be called the Shinkage-ryu school. The greatest characteristic of Shinkage-ryu lay in its unique combat method called go-no-sen, hao-no-shen, attacking after. This was literally a defensive victory swordsmanship that involved discerning the moment when an opponent launched an attack and turning to counterattack in accordance with that movement. While conventional swordsmanship emphasized force-driven preemptive attacks, Shinkage-ryu established an extremely intellectual combat method that read the opponent's psychological state and calmly analyzed and exploited openings in technique. Words that Nobutsuna himself spoke to. His disciples have been preserved in later writings. Kamiizumi Nobutsuna, the sword is the heart. If the heart is not righteous, neither can the sword be righteous. While polishing technique is important, first one must examine one's own heart, dispel evil thoughts, and take up the sword with a pure and clear spirit. This is what matters most. This profound philosophy became the wellspring of spirituality. that would have a decisive influence on all subsequent Japanese swordsmanship, not merely technique for defeating opponents, but a method of training to discipline one's own heart and polish one's character through swordsmanship. This way of thinking has been passed down continuously, from the peaceful Edo period to modern Kendo.
Chapter 2. The Ambitions of the Yagyu Family.
And their path to becoming sword instructors to the shogun. Among the disciples who inherited the essence of Shinkage-ryu from Kamiizumi Nobutsuna, the one who left the greatest impact on later generations and carved his name in history was Yagyu Munenori Sekishusai. Muneyoshi was born into the family of a minor lord who ruled Yagyu no Sato in Yamato Province, present-day Yagyucho, Nara City, Nara Prefecture, and had been known for his excellence in martial arts from a young age. In Eiroku 7-1564, Muneyoshi received from his master Kamiizumi Nobutsuna the highest title of Ikoku Ichinin, no Hyōhōsha Ikiku Hitori no Byōhōsha, the one martial artist of the province. This was recognition as the most outstanding swordsman in that province within. Shinkage-ryu, essentially meaning full licensing. Having received this title, Muneyoshi further developed the Shinkage-ryu he learned from his master, independently systematizing it as Yagyu Shinkage-ryu. The characteristic of Yagyu Shinkage-ryu lay not only in technical innovation, but also in possessing political strategic thinking. Muneyoshi was not merely a martial artist, but also possessed excellent political sense for reading the flow of the times. From the Tensho to Keicho periods, he carefully observed the movements of Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu as they advanced national unification, ultimately choosing the path of approaching the Tokugawa family. In the Battle of Sekigahara in Keicho, 1600, Muneyoshi clearly sided with the Eastern Army. This was not necessarily a safe choice for a minor lord, but ultimately this decision would greatly influence the fate of the Yagyu family. After the battle, Muneyoshi was granted a direct audience with Tokugawa Ieyasu and had the opportunity to demonstrate his swordsmanship before him. What Muneyoshi performed before Ieyasu at this time was a technique called Mutodori Wudaokuri. This was one of the ultimate secrets of Shinkage-ryu, subduing an armed opponent with bare hands. Rather than taking away the opponent's sword, it was a technique that embodied the philosophy of Katsuninken Huo-renjian, life-giving sword, by controlling the opponent's spirit to win without fighting. Ieyasu was deeply moved and offered to grant Muneyoshi a 2,000 koku fief on the spot. However, Muneyoshi, already advanced in age, politely declined this offer. Instead, he recommended his fifth son, Munenori, Yagyu Muneyoshi. Such generous reward is too much for this aged body. However, as one who would transmit Yagyu martial arts to future generations, I would like to have my son Munenori serve you. This humble yet calculated decision would determine the subsequent prosperity of the Yagyu family. Entering the Keicho era 1596-1615, Yagyu Munenori ascended to Edo Castle as sword instructor to the Tokugawa shogun family, following his father's wishes. However, Munenori's true talent lay not so much in swordsmanship technique itself, as in political insight and organizational management ability. He positioned swordsmanship not merely as martial technique, but as an important political tool supporting the shogunate's governance system. When teaching swordsmanship to daimyo and hatamoto, Munenori did not simply transmit techniques, but built human relationships with them and collected various political information. He then organized and analyzed this information for use in the shogunate's policy decisions, functioning like what we might call an intelligence gathering and analysis agency today. This was truly the construction of an information network through swordsmanship, which greatly contributed to the stable governance of the Edo shogunate. The Heiho Kadensho Bingfa-jia Chuanshu, written by Munenori, contains many fascinating passages imbued with his deep philosophy. Among the most famous is the following passage: Yagyu Munenori, the ultimate secret of swordsmanship, is not to cut down people, but to give life to people. A true martial artist is one who knows the way to win without fighting. The sword is not a tool for killing people, but a tool for giving life to people and governing the world. This philosophy of Katsuninken became an extremely important concept that redefined the raison d'etre of warriors in the peaceful Edo period. What role should warriors who had survived the turbulent world play in peaceful times? Munenori found the answer within swordsmanship and theorized it.
Chapter 3, the era of school diversification in the storm of technological innovation.
By the mid-Edo period, various schools derived from Shinkage-ryu had spread throughout the nation. Swordsmanship instructors in each domain developed their schools while adding their own unique innovations, leading to the flowering of regionally distinctive swordsmanship cultures. However, there was one man who brought transformation to this stable era's swordsmanship world from an entirely new perspective. Chiba Shusaku, the man who would later establish Hokushin Itto-ryu and have a decisive influence on the loyalist warriors of the Bakumatsu period. During the Bunka era 1804-1818, Shusaku was born to a farming family in Mutsu Province, present-day Iwaki City, Fukushima Prefecture. Though not of high status, he had displayed extraordinary athletic ability and concentration from childhood. Shusaku entered the path of swordsmanship by learning Nakanishi-ha Itto-ryu at a local dojo. However, when he began serious swordsmanship training, many dojos in Edo still centered their practice on kata-keiko form practice. Kata-keiko was a traditional training method where master and disciple, or senior and junior, would pair up to accurately repeat predetermined movements. This method certainly had advantages. It could reliably teach basic body movement and sword handling and accurately preserve traditional techniques of schools. However, Shusaku had fundamental doubts about this method. Chiba Shusaku. No matter how many times one repeats forms, one cannot develop the ability to respond to the tension of actually facing an opponent or to unpredictable movements. Isn't true swordsmanship something cultivated through earnest matches between living human beings? This revolutionary thinking would bring great transformation to the later swordsmanship world. Shusaku's innovation lay above all in developing practical and efficient training methods. First, he worked on improving shinai-keiko bamboo sword practice. Previous bamboo swords had been made quite heavy to approximate the weight and feel of real swords. However, these could not endure long training sessions and were difficult for beginners to handle. Shusaku developed new bamboo swords that balanced lightness with appropriate flexibility, dramatically improving training efficiency. Next, he worked on improving protective equipment. He also improved men face mask, due chest protector, and coat hand guards to be more practical and safer. He particularly devoted attention to the men, pursuing optimal shape through repeated prototypes to balance field of vision with safety. This made more intense and practical training possible. However, Shusaku's most revolutionary technical innovation was systematizing 68 techniques. Many conventional schools had preserved hundreds or sometimes over 1,000 complex and diverse forms. While these certainly represented schools' traditions and deep technical accumulation, actually mastering them required enormous time, and many techniques were rarely used in actual combat. Hokushin Itto-ryu thoroughly analyzed and examined these techniques, carefully selecting only truly effective techniques for actual combat and consolidating them into 68. Through this rationalization, technical mastery that previously required over 10 years became possible in just 3 to 5 years. Behind this rationalization lay changes in contemporary social conditions. After the arrival of the Black Ships 1853, anti-foreign sentiment spread throughout Japan, and people from across the nation gathered in Edo seeking to rapidly master swordsmanship to counter foreign threats. Sakamoto Ryoma, Kondo Isami, Okita Soji, Ito Kashitaro, these figures who would later leave their names in history, also knocked on the doors of Hokushin Itto-ryu during this period. Training at the Chiba dojo was unimaginably severe. Days of swinging bamboo swords almost without rest from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. It was not uncommon for the dojo floor to be stained with sweat and blood. However, what was nurtured in that harsh training was not merely swordsmanship technique. It was the deep bonds between those who shared the same aspirations and endured the same hardships together, and the indomitable spirit that would not yield to anything.
Chapter 4, Bakumatsu Turmoil and the Fate of Master Swordsmen.
March 3rd, and Seiset Myoten 600. On this day, Edo was struck by record-breaking heavy snow. The snowy landscape outside Sakurada Gate was beautiful, yet filled with silence. But a tragedy was about to shatter that tranquility. The assassination of Inosuke, the Sakuradaman incident, From this incident onward, Japan would plunge headlong into the turbulent Bakumatsu period, and those who played central roles in this era of confusion and transformation were the master swordsmen who had honed their skills in various schools. The Shinsengumi was formed in Bunkyu 1863. This organization, formed by Kondo Isami, Hijikata Toshizo, Okita Soji, Nagakura, Shinpachi, Harada Sanosuke, Todo Heisuke, Yamanami Keisuke, and others, was tasked with suppressing the Sano-joi revere the emperor, expel the barbarians faction in Kyoto. Most of them were from the Tama region and had honed their skills in Tennin-Risshin-ryu, a practical school. Kondo Isami and Okita Soji had the relationship of head family and successor of Tennin-Risshin-ryu, while Hijikata Toshizo learned swordsmanship under Sato Hikogoro. The law enforcement through swordsmanship they deployed in Kyoto was truly the pinnacle of practical swordsmanship. In the Ikadaya incident, the Kinmon incident, and numerous assassination scenes, they literally engaged in life-or-death earnest duels. Meanwhile, in Satsuma Domain, a unique swordsmanship called Jigen-ryu had developed. This school, which emphasized Ichi no Tachi, first sword, was an extremely aggressive swordsmanship aimed at definitively finishing opponents with the initial strike. Saigo Takamori, Okubo Toshimichi, and others also honed their skills in this school and would play important roles in the later Meiji Restoration. In Choshu Domain, Yagyu Shinkage-ryu lineage swordsmanship was popular, and Yoshida Shoin, Takasugi, Shinsaku, Kusaka Genzui, and others were also versed in swordsmanship. Each domain's swordsmanship functioned not merely as martial technique, but also as a means of political identity expression. However, among the swordsmen of this era, the one who traced the most interesting and symbolic trajectory may have been Sakamoto Ryoma. Ryoma was born into a lower-ranking samurai family in Tosa Domain and had been familiar with swordsmanship from boyhood. In Kaie 6, 1853, at age 19, he went to Edo and entered the Chiba dojo, devoting himself to training in Hokushin Itto-ryu. His skill was considerable, earning full licensing in just 3 years. However, Ryoma's true greatness lay in abandoning the sword after mastering it. He shifted from armed to political solutions, becoming a key figure in what might be called restoration. Without swords, through mediating the Satsuma Choshu alliance and promoting the return of political power to the emperor. A letter Ryoma sent to his sister Otome contains striking words showing his change of heart. Sakamoto Ryoma, the sword is not for cutting down people. It is for training the heart to change the world and elevating one's aspirations. Might not a true samurai be one who can move the realm without drawing his sword? These words make us deeply consider the meaning of swordsmanship in the Bakamatsu era. In January KO 4, 1868, the Battle of Toba-Fushimi opened the Boshin War. However, what became cruelly clear in this war was the limitations of swords and blades before modern weapons. Against the latest rifles like Spencer guns and Enfield rifles equipped by the Satsuma Choshu forces, even the most skilled swordsmen were helpless. Okita Soji of the Shinsengumi collapsed from lung disease tuberculosis and could not even stand on the battlefield. Kondo Isami was captured by government forces at Nagareyama and executed by firing squad at Itabashi. Hijikata Toshizo fought government forces at Hakodate Goryokaku and met his heroic end, felled by bullets. Their deaths were not merely personal tragedies. They symbolized the end of the Age of Swords that had supported Japanese warrior society for 400 years. However, the end of this era was simultaneously a new beginning. In Meiji 9, 1876, the Meiji government promulgated the Sword Abolition Edict, prohibiting samurai from wearing swords. Swords were the very identity of samurai, and this law meant the effective dissolution of the samurai class. However, it was impossible to completely eradicate swordsmanship itself. This was because the technical systems and spirituality accumulated over 400 years had already taken deep root in the foundations of Japanese culture.
Chapter 5. Transmission to Modernity and the Immortality of Swordsmanship.
In September, Meiji 10, 1877, the Satsuma Rebellion ended. With Saigo Takamori's suicide, Japan's civil wars effectively came to an end for the last time. The Age of Warriors had completely ended. However, the history of swordsmanship did not end here. Rather, it would evolve into an entirely new stage. Initially, the Meiji government viewed swordsmanship negatively as a relic of the feudal system. However, as time passed, the value of spiritual cultivation embedded in swordsmanship and its effects on physical training came to be re-evaluated. Particularly as Westernization proceeded rapidly, the necessity of maintaining Japan's unique cultural identity came to be recognized. In Meiji 28, 1895, the Dai Nippon Butokukai Great Japan Martial Virtue Association was established. This organization's purpose lay in preserving and developing martial arts and training the nation's mind and body. Particularly noteworthy was the beginning of attempts to integrate techniques that each school had independently developed and systematize them anew as Kendo, the process of reconstructing the techniques of schools with their own unique characteristics, Shinkage-ryu, Hokushin Itto-ryu, Jigen-ryu, Tenin-rishin-ryu, and others, as a single competitive sport was truly a great revolution in Japanese swordsmanship history. What played an important role in this integration process were the instructors who had received direct guidance from Bakamatsu swordsmen. While holding memories of actual combat, they explored the proper form of swordsmanship suited to the peaceful Meiji era. The influence of one figure named Sakakibara Kenkichi was particularly significant. He devoted himself to Kendo development in the Meiji period and would later be called the Sword Saint of Meiji. Sakakibara Kenkichi, Kendo is not mere martial technique, it is character cultivation. Technical improvement comes with spiritual growth, and spiritual growth promotes technical advancement. This is the true value of our nation's Kendo. These words succinctly express the Kendo philosophy from Meiji onward. From the Taisho period through early Showa, Kendo was incorporated in earnest into Japan's educational system. Kendo classes in elementary, middle, and normal schools, Kendo training in police and military forces, establishment of instructor training systems, and holding of nationwide competitive tournaments. Swordsmanship, born as practical technique in the Sengoku period, was finally completely reborn as a national sport. In Showa 6, 1931, the All-Japan Kendo Championship was held, and Kendo established its position as a modern sport both in name and reality. In dojos throughout the country, many people of all ages and both sexes enjoyed Kendo, their numbers reaching hundreds of thousands. However, after Japan's surrender in Showa 20, 1945, GHQ's Kendo Prohibition Order became the greatest crisis in swordsmanship history. As a symbol of militarism, Kendo was completely banned and dojos nationwide were closed. Many instructors despaired, and the danger of 400 years of tradition being severed became reality. During this period, some people secretly continued training, but practicing Kendo openly was impossible. However, after the San Francisco Peace Treaty took effect in Showa 27, 1952, the situation changed dramatically. That same year, the All-Japan Kendo Federation was established, and Kendo achieved revival as a sport. Along with post-war recovery, the Kendo population rapidly recovered. And today, Kendo is practiced in over 60 countries worldwide, with more than 50 countries and regions belonging to the International Kendo Federation. In France, America, Brazil, Korea, and other places around the world, Japanese Kendo is studied and developing while fusing with each country's culture. The spirit of Shinkage-ryu that Kamiizumi Nobutsuna established in the Sengoku world is truly being passed down to people around the world, transcending time and borders. Modern Kendo condenses 400 years of history within it. Shinkage-ryu's Go-no-sen, Yagyu Shinkage-ryu's Katsunin-ken, Hokushin Itto-ryu's rationalism, and the passionate aspirations of Bakumatsu loyalists. All of these have melted together to form the modern Kendo spirit.
Ending.
Keen! The sound of bamboo swords resonates again. Within the people training in modern dojos, the souls of master swordsmen from 400 years ago truly live on. Kamiizumi Nobutsuna's "If the heart is not righteous, neither can the sword be righteous," Yagyu Munenori's Katsunin Ken, Chiba Shusaku's rational, innovative spirit, and the passionate aspirations and high ideals of Bakumatsu loyalists beginning with Sakamoto Ryoma. All of these are embedded in a single bamboo sword and continue to be reliably passed down from master to disciple to new generations today as well. The true value of swordsmanship does not lie in cutting down people. It lies in raising people, training the heart, and forming character to build a better society. This immutable truth is the most precious and universal legacy that the magnificent 400-year story of Japanese swordsmanship from Shinkage-ryu to Hokushin Itto-ryu has left to modern society.